Good afternoon or good evening. I'm not quite sure what it is at 5 o'clock. Probably is good evening, just about. And welcome back to the Inferno project for week 3 of our great quest to mark the 50th anniversary of this fan favourite, much acclaimed Doctor Who story, Inferno. I'm Dan Hadley, Birmingham's King of the Geeks. You might know me from the Type 40 Doctor Who podcast and those silly Type Over 40 videos we like to put out here on the Spacebook. And although my console's not shaking and rattling at the moment, I'm about to bring in some familiar faces. Two familiar faces this time. If you bear with me one moment. Hello. Got there in the end, didn't we? So, yes, two old friends this time. Firstly, welcome back for a third week running, Stephen Woolston. Good evening. How are we?
Hey, Dan. Really good, thank you. Really good to be here again.
For a whole 7 days, eh? We have no idea what's going to happen next, do we?
We have no idea, yeah, and I've been waiting to talk to my schoolmates about this all week.
That's the spirit of 1970 coming right at you. And yes, secondly, this time, brand new to this live strand that we've got going on, but you'll know him from those Type Over 40 videos and the podcasts. Welcome to Inferno 50, Simon Horton.
Well, hello, thank you very much. It's lovely to be here. I've got cheese on toast under the grill because it's Saturday tea time. I've got my cup of tea, so I'm ready for some classic Doctor Who.
As is traditional, yeah. I used to have crumpets. I was going to say
crumpets, pikelets, cheese on toast with some Branston pickle on top.
Branston pickle? I never had that. That sounds amazing.
You've never had Branston pickle on cheese on toast? It's the best. You've got to have it. It just takes you straight back to the 70s.
I've had some Leon Perrins and brown sauce, but no, never Branston. That sounds absolutely incredible.
Bring out the Branston.
I've got none in at all. Yet here we are, Inferno, the fourth and final story of season 7 of Doctor Who, of proper Doctor Who. And we're at the coalface again. Where we left, it was a big cliffhanger. And Simon, you particularly wanted to come in and talk about this segment of Inferno, didn't you? But before we get too stuck into that, this story in particular, can you remember the first time you saw it?
I can actually remember the first time I saw it, and the reason I can remember that, it was one of the very, very first videos, Doctor Who classic episodes rather, that I got on video on VHS on the old, it was in black and white and fuzz vision, and it kept rolling, and it was one of the very, very first stories that I got on pirate. Don't tell anybody. Pirate video. And so it was particularly exciting
for that one particular, or was it just a case of you'll take what you'll take?
I think, to be honest, in those days, Dan, it was you take what you get. You would go to some covert meeting with people that we don't even mention, and you would say, what have you got on, in your carrier bag kind of thing, and they'd tell you what they've got. Okay, yeah, I'll have that one, thank you. And because I went for Inferno, because it was 7 episodes, I thought, wow, that's going to be good value for my $5 or however much it was that I paid for it. So that was one of the reasons why I went for Inferno. But I knew very, very little about it until I actually sat down and watched it, and I was just literally engrossed from the very off of Inferno, and I've loved it ever since.
Because some are daunted by the length of these longer stories, aren't they? Anything over 6 parts, I think, Stephen, does sort of put some of us off, doesn't it? Even some hardened Doctor Who fans.
Yeah, it's a tough slog, and some of the stories, let's face it, don't really have that natural length. And I remember, Barry Letts and Terence Dix saying that the sort of the 7-episode format and the multiplicity of those was something that was forced on them by their predecessors, and they hated it. But although we said it before, this story, although it's not fast, it keeps you, it holds you, and it holds you for all the 7 episodes, and I think that's really good.
So I feel that way, and
I'm
surprised every time I see it, guys.
I think the main reason, obviously, it holds is because, it's just a really, really well-written story, but also that extra that second dimension that they bring in, the parallel worlds, really boosts it. I've often wondered if you could sort of unpick it, unravel it, and remove that parallel world thread. Would it be as good a story? Would it be as loved as much as it is? It's a really difficult one to tell. I think it probably would, in all honesty, still be a damn good story. But that parallel world really just literally takes it up onto the next level. It's as simple as that.
So I suspect that if you were to take it apart, if you were a proper screenwriter, well, no, you do write. I mean, you both write, don't you? If you were to take it apart and look at the mechanics of it and the way they set up the characters in the first two parts, before we even get where we're going now, it's done in such a way, and we've mentioned before on these shows how nimble it is. And how they use, I wouldn't say shorthand so much, but the characters could be seen as stereotypes, but because they've cast it well, they don't get played to the stereotypes too badly, I don't think. So it keeps it grounded somehow. And but yeah, I think if you took it away from that, if you sort of divorced it into two parts, then it would show that they can't exist so, or certainly the stuff on our Earth. I know what I'm trying to say, even if they don't. The stuff on our Earth, I think, really needs the rest of it in a way that the parallel stuff doesn't. There we go. We got there in the end.
Yeah, maybe. I'm still. The jury's still out for me. I still wonder whether it would work. Not as well, but it would still work without that parallel world story, because it's both sides of the story they just rattle along. As Stephen says, it isn't a fast-paced story. It's very, very steady, but boy, does it grip you and hold you right the way through. Definitely the best Pertwee story for me personally.
Yeah, I first saw this on VHS. I think it was a copy that somebody had got me off UK Gold. It was a long time till I saw it in full. I think I'd seen snippets of it here and there because there are certain, and I think what we're going to watch this time was the first episode I saw because of the drama of it and the uniqueness of it and that uncanny feeling to it. I think it was at a Doctor Who group where they got a chunk of 3 or 4 different stories as samplers. And I of course, taken out of context, I was still able to follow it, and I wanted to see more, but I think I had to wait several years. How times have changed. You don't know how lucky you are out there. Well, you do. Kids.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it, though, Dan? Because we just couldn't get to see these things unless they were broadcast, and they were broadcast very rarely up until the VHS days.
Talking about broadcast, here we are. That very first broadcast on the 23rd of May, 1970. And have you got the Radio Times? Do you want to do your best Radio 4 reading voice, Stephen?
Yes, of course. So the Radio Times previewed this episode by saying, the Doctor's attempt to reactivate the TARDIS console hurls him into a situation where old friends seem deadly enemies, even Liz and the Brigadier. So quite a short teaser, but a teaser nevertheless.
And look
and of course, at this time,
there's nobody extra in this one that we haven't seen before, I don't think. But we do start to see, obviously, there's a big difference. They don't need to, because we're getting, in a sense, we do get a completely fresh cast. So anybody who hasn't seen this before, you're in for a treat. I can't believe there are too many people who haven't and call themselves Doctor Who fans, but you never know. I do hear from people. And yeah, this 1970, so just as a way of sort of snipping us back into the 1970s groove, this was still number 1. For the second week running, the England World Cup squad with Back Home. Do you remember this one, Simon? Have you heard it since?
No, I don't think I heard it at the time, and I was only 2, so no, it's passed me by, that one.
Yeah, we were talking last time about the legacy of footballers singing pop songs and themes with the big tournaments and things like that, and how it sort of really came into fashion. I think this could have been the first one. I can't imagine that the '66 World Cup squad would have had one, because of the nature of that competition. I think it was supposed to be staged in one place and ended up being staged in another. I can't quite remember what it was. I think that it was staged in England, wasn't it? That's right. It was staged here, and I think it was by default because everybody was short of money. I can't really remember it. But yeah, obviously England got something to prove, and it didn't quite go that way in the end. But yeah, it's nice to see. And people do still talk about it.
Yeah, they certainly didn't prove their ability to sing. Let's put it that way.
Definitely not.
I
Definitely
think
not.
we can be certain of that one.
So, in lieu of the fact that nothing had changed in the pop charts that week, I thought we'd take a look at the film landscape of the time. This is a British magazine called ABC Film Review, as it was known then.
I remember it well. You used to pick it up from the ABC cinema. Remember it very well.
It was an old title, so my research has said, that started in 1950. Just as a trial run for 2 or 3 weeks. That was when, obviously, a few years after the war, when the British film industry was really starting to get going again, wasn't it? And it was originally called the ABC Film Review because it was tied to ABC Cinemas. They were a big cinema chain, weren't they? Kind of like Odeon was. And it was just 20 pages and cost 3 old pence, published in association with Pathé. And there's a film called Every Home Should Have One there, which is a British Lion movie. A lot of their films get shown on Talking Pictures TV now, don't they? So you probably see this at some point. But there's Marty Feldman and Judy Cornwall singing into a toothbrush. So it seems. Judy Cornwall from Paradise Towers, isn't it?
Oh, nice link there, Dan. Well done.
Yeah.
Very good. You don't just throw these things together, do you?
I keep telling people. Yeah. She was, I can't remember which Resi she was. I think, was it Maddie? Somebody like that?
Tilde. I can't remember.
Tilde,
Paradise.
Tabby,
Yeah,
Maddie.
Tabby, what I don't know. One of them.
Best part of 20 years younger, locking about with Marty Feldman there. But yeah, that title was still going up until 2009. Just like Starburst, really? It was taken in by the company Visual Imagination. And that they carried on publishing it in a broader way. It became more like a quasi Empire style magazine. It spluttered to a halt in 2009 when a lot of magazines went under, and it's still in existence now, but it's a sort of quite lackluster website, really. Not very impressive at all for a title with such a long and prestigious history, I'm afraid. Yeah, but yeah, I remember Film Reviewers to pick it up all the time. So yes, so did you buy comics and things on a Saturday afternoon, Simon? Did you have any other rituals that you got into at that point?
Well, as I say, I was only 2 at the time that Inferno was going out. So no, I was probably into just gurgling in a corner at that point. So no, I wasn't really into pop culture at that point. I don't think.
How about what I can tell you is that. Is that the edition of Beezer for boys and girls had a front page with Ginger collecting a parcel from a railway station. So if you were reading Beezer around about this time, that's the story you would have been reading.
Rings bells, Beezer does. Now you said that.
I would, yeah. I want to go and look if that's online to read now. I love all those old comics.
Absolutely, they're brilliant.
It's like local newspaper style thrills and spills, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Yes, so we're gonna step into classic Doctor Who territory now with Inferno Part 3. We're going to watch it director's commentary style. You're going to get our various observations and silly jokes and whatever else, and a graphic to the right of us, which will sort of go alongside just for review purposes. And we want you to have your legitimately purchased copy of Inferno to hand. It could be on VHS or DVD, or if you're a BritBox subscriber, get your finger ready and hit that button in a few moments. I'll just get it up. There we are. And I'll take that off because I'll be looking in another direction. So I do that. And in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, that music takes you back, doesn't it? Oh, we've lost Dan. Dan's jumped ship already.
No, I'm still here.
Are you still there? We just can't see you for some reason.
Because I'm looking in another direction. I'm looking into another dimension.
Yeah. Incidentally, so we're getting the start of Doctor Who exactly 50 years, pretty much to the time that it was broadcast for the first time, this episode. And of course, if you'd have been watching BBC One already, you would have been watching Grandstand, and we would have been just having the results service, and we'd have been watching the fight of the week, racing from Kempton Park, show jumping, and cricket. But of course, if you're anything like me, that was just the boring stuff waiting for this.
I'd have definitely been asleep.
I still remember distinctly in the 1970s waiting for Doctor Who to turn up and just praying for Grandstand to finish and for the sports results to finish. They seemed to go on forever and ever and ever. as you waited for Doctor Who to arrive.
Absolutely.
And
And
it was just-
doesn't wake you up, nothing will.
And it was just such a thrilling time, just waiting to hear that music and the title sequence. And so even now, 50 years later, it still takes me right back. As soon as I hear the music, see the titles, I just remember, being however old I was
exactly
at the time.
the same, and only really with the this original version of the signature tune.
Oh, absolutely, Dan. Yeah, you're right. It's only this original.
A similar
tune that
thing
does
with
it.
the 80s stuff, but not the same.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Saturday afternoons transformed for 25 minutes when that music started. It was like, I mean, it completely stood out from everything else that was on the BBC on that time. This was another time, another place. We all loved it, didn't we? When that music started, those credits start, you just get into that Doctor Who mode, and that's your favorite time of Saturday afternoon.
Olaf Pooley is
and that's
really...
why people had their snacks, I think.
Yeah.
I just love Olaf Pooley in this. He's just absolutely brilliant. I love Christopher Benjamin. The performances, I mean, actually, as is quite well known at this time on television, things were still very theatrically produced in that a lot of the time people would be shouting very, very loudly as though they were still trying to hit the back wall, because it was still very much that stage performance. And yet, actually, when you watch this, it's all very, very understated. It's very nicely played. It's not over the top. Nobody's shouting, at least not yet. Which is actually, it's often quite unusual for very early 70s stuff.
Because the stakes are quite high when the story opens, and by this point, the intrigue's really setting in.
Yeah, I mean, if the audience isn't invested by now, they're not going to be. So, but they are invested by now. And the other thing that as we talk about the sort of production here and the stagecraft, is it occurred to me as I was previewing this earlier today, there's quite a lot of extras in the background moving around, sort of give that impression that this is a busy place.
And
well, that's one of the things. And this is one of the things that I was always impressed by with Inferno. It actually, considering when it was made, the production values are actually very good. Also, when you consider the fact that it was at the very end of the season, when normally they've run out of money, and so you're right, Stephen. Normally they'd be cutting back on those extras in the back of shots, and they don't. They keep them there. And so, as a result, it has a quality feel about it.
It's the simplest idea in the world, isn't it? Just to put some green paint on a guy's hand, but put it on the hand of an actor like him.
Mm. Oh yeah, the improvisation is fantastic. By the way, I can't remember where I picked this up, and it might be incorrect, so forgive me if it's wrong. But I did hear that green stuff is actually the stuff that they use in garages to clean oil off your hands.
What, Swarfega?
No, I think it's quite a slimy substance.
It's the simplest of effects, isn't it?
The glitter ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing with the glitter ball that really bugs me is the way that you can see the cuts. Every time you get the glitter ball, you just see the cut, and I just think, oh, why didn't they just dissolve across instead of cut? That's just me as a complete geek. I think it's one of those things that just literally just slightly lifts me out of the drama for a second. Gosh, doesn't the console look battered and bruised at that stage?
And green, Simon, and green.
And pale green, absolutely. We've talked about this before, haven't we, Dan? About it being pale green, but boy, it looks so battered and
look how misty the perspex is in the centre as well. How probably a few cracks in there that we can't even see.
It's seen better days, that's for sure. I'm trying to think. At what point? When was the next new console built? Was it? It's a while. Is it still? Yeah, it's still a couple of years off, I think, before the next new console is built.
I think it's Colony in Space, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, sounds about right. It's midway through. Oh, could even be. It's not the 3 Doctors. I'm just trying to think. Is it for the 10th season?
Here's the Doctor talking to himself, guys. I mean, we've had a conversation about this with present-day Doctor Who, and people sort of making excuses for the writing. I'm sad to say, but here the writing, less is more. The performance, less is more. So you don't really think of it. He's not. There's no exposition. This is how a person would react.
Well, I think what's interesting.
Have you noticed that those doors are sort of like almost TARDIS looking like doors with the arrangement of the windows?
I love that.
I never noticed that. That's a very good point. That's a really interesting point. I wonder whether that was deliberate.
You couldn't make it out on the video at all. Really, you couldn't see the definition of it. Just was nowhere near. I mean, I even love these old industrial estates, places I used to play on when I was a kid. I was never supposed to be there, of course.
No, of course not.
But security, there wasn't so many cameras around then.
It looks very early 70s, doesn't it? It looks very grim. And the other thing that really strikes me, and even more so watching it again now, and it's a while since I watched Inferno, it's so much reminiscent of something like Quatermass, or a Nigel Neal, something like the Stone Tape, a Nigel Neal kind of drama. It really has that feel about it. This particular story does, and as a result, it feels very unique within the Doctor Who canon. And of course, it is a unique story in that respect. Well, in so many respects, it's unique.
He's starting to not piece it together as such, but he's noticing little things, isn't he? As he goes about his business, his remote control door handle doesn't work anymore.
But it's interesting because a viewer watching this for the first time will be thinking, "What on earth is going on?" They wouldn't have a clue what this is all about.
At that SRS meeting in 1989, never having seen parts 1 and 2, I had no idea what had happened.
What's going on?
Why the TARDIS console was in a shed? No idea at all.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, he is picking up on little cues, and the thing is that now I can't remember if this is exactly here, but didn't one of these stuntmen get injured?
Yes, absolutely, very, very badly injured. I think was it Derek Waring? I can't remember. One of them gets really bad, has to go to hospital and have stitches in their leg because they just jump out of the way just a fraction too late.
Yeah, and apparently
four Doctor Who had me for precisely these occasions.
I'm sure it's Derek Ware. Could be this shot. It's this shot. No, it's not this one. But apparently then he was back at work again in the afternoon. He just came straight. He went to the hospital, got his stitches, and came straight back to work in the afternoon. Carried on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite fast action, isn't it? Considering that this is BBC One, tea time, 1970, on an industrial estate.
Well, yeah. I mean, Mary Whitehouse would have been having a fit.
Yeah, she'd been having kittens over her crumpets at this. It's funny. It's interesting to watch John Pertwee because, of course, his hair, as Barry Letts has often said, John Pertwee's hair got more bouffant as his time went on in Doctor Who. And here it's really quite clipped and it's short, basically.
It doesn't budge. It doesn't budge. They've had it as careful a job as I've done on my own hair this week.
Brilliant, isn't that lovely? Only in Doctor Who would you have a shot like that. There's no other drama that would do that.
And played totally straight as well. No mugging to camera, no little wink, no funny music.
No, it's played straight. It's played completely straight. But no, can you imagine another drama that would be brave enough to do something as ridiculous as that and get away with it?
Not one.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, we talked about little cues about how things are different. And what I love about this is although they're there to be seen, they're not like pushed down your throat. Because one of the things we're going to see here is he's going to re-encounter people that actually fell off this and died in episode 1 or 2 or whichever one it was. Yeah. So as a kid watching this, if you're picking up on this and you're thinking, hey, this is different.
And this is interesting for me because it just brings out all you need in any drama is a really, really good script. And so I think when Doctor Who goes wrong is when it tries to reference too much in its back catalogue, it tries to be too clever, it tries to do too much stuff and explain too much stuff away. And this is just really, really good drama, and that's all you need from Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And sometimes to convey menace, all you need is some gunk on a middle-aged man's face.
Absolutely.
It just works.
Well, again,
because here we're seeing stuff that already happened in episode 2, but sort of happening again because obviously the Doctor wasn't there when the same things were happening in the alternate world.
And of course, we're 10 minutes in now, and still the viewer who'd be seeing this for the first time still wouldn't have a clue what was going on.
Very little dialogue.
Yeah, there hasn't been any dialogue for how long now? Is this the infamous? Ware. Yeah, this is Derek Ware. Now I think this is the infamous fall coming up, isn't it?
Yeah, the second one, isn't it? Because he does a fall, or there's a fall in episode 2 where this very character takes his first fall, and then there's going to be the more spectacular fall, the record-breaking fall.
That's right. It was the
in
highest one at the time, wasn't it? I'm sure it's been beaten since, but it was certainly the highest fall at the time.
Yeah, yeah. And there's also a story that while they were filming this, Derek Ware nearly slipped through the railings. Yeah, so that would have been a bit of a. Here we go. We're getting ready for the. Now, apparently, the guy who's doing the shooting is also the guy who's doing the falling.
That's a really scary fall.
In such a way, that's a lot higher than.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
It was a record breaker.
Well, yeah, it absolutely was a record breaker, and as I say, I'd be interested to know whether it's been beaten since. It probably has, but nonetheless. And here we go. And what is all this about? It's just brilliant setup. This is who is this character? You're going to wonder.
Yeah. Now, obviously, he hasn't fully twigged. Yet, because he's still calling out after Liz.
He can't understand why she doesn't recognise him.
And she looks so cold.
She's brilliant, isn't she? I think she's such an overlooked actress, Carolyn John. She's absolutely brilliant, and she really shows her mettle in as this particular character more so than as Liz in the real world. She just shines.
Yeah.
Bit of kinky boot action going on there. They like their kinky boots in the alternative world, obviously. Look at that door.
Kinky boots.
Hey, and there's the shot. There's the shot. And surely everybody must know the story about the eye patch by now from dear old, sadly missed Nick Courtney.
We'll have to see if you can remember it word for word in the third portion of the show. See if we when we.
Incidentally, there's a nice little production touch here that if you remember, the office was filled out with some of the Brigadier's personal pictures in episode 1, and of course here it's all gone because this is now a much more pared back, militaristic,
historical, authoritarian.
Now, one thing that does make me laugh, though, is that, of course, as a child, you're not going to think of this, and we're suspending our disbelief. But if you really think you've got a spy or a saboteur, you're not really going to be walking him round the centre of your complex.
Even John Levine's snarling ever so slightly, isn't he?
Yeah.
Sergeant Benton.
Yeah, and because he was very fond of.
Because by this point, Liz started off as quite a sort of waspish character, didn't she? And she's softened a lot by Inferno. And so to see her like this, sort of way up there in comparison, it's really disconcerting.
And the scar is excellent on Nick Courtney. I mean, the makeup is really, really good. I can't remember at what stage the eye patch came in. I can't remember, was it originally planned or was it something that they came up in rehearsals, or I can't remember where. And what a bizarre thing to put one of your lead characters in an eye patch. It's a really bold decision, and I feel that there aren't many actors today that would actually be prepared to do so much in an eye patch because it's very unflattering.
I can think of 2 actors who can pull this off: Nicholas Courtney and Samuel L. Jackson. Nobody else.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're quite right. I just think there are a lot of actors that just would not be prepared to do this because it's very debilitating for an actor.
Yeah, but I think the actors they must have absolutely loved though being able to go out of character like this.
It must have been a ball for them to step out of character and do something so completely different.
Seeing him without a moustache is strange as well. I mean, when you see that in behind-the-scenes photographs, that's weird.
Yeah.
Actually, looking at it like this,
and look at
it probably is quite a big set. Come to think of it,
it is a big set. And Starman is brilliant. I mean, look at Starman now. He looks like Dr. No. He looks like a James Bond villain now. All of a sudden,
exactly.
He really does.
And the beard's gone.
And the beard's
gone.
And those glasses. It's just a brilliant look.
Yeah.
It just.
And even. Sorry, go ahead.
It feels like all of the craft people that were working on this, makeup, costume, design, they all really upped their game. It feels to me for this story, and it's almost like, did they read the script and realise that this was a classic, and so they put extra love into it. That's almost how it feels.
I think
there's
the
no
power
scrimping here at all.
The analogies with World War II at that point, only 25 years later, the people would have grown up. Because what strikes me about it, Starman and everybody else, the tunics that they're dressed in, his glasses, it reminds me of the birth of the atomic age and Godzilla and films like that. You see Japanese scientists sort of blinking up at whatever they've created, whatever horror they've constructed, they've birthed. It reminds me of all that post-war sci-fi B movies.
Yeah, but you know what? This is very James Bondish, really, isn't it? Because here you have, like in a Bond movie, you'd have the big Ken Adams set. Like you say, you'd have the villain dressed up just like that. Doctor Who here is clearly like James Bond. He's still dressed dapper, and they're speaking, very very nicely to each other, and they're walking him around their lair. It's so You Only Live Twice.
It is.
And even Petra here, she's now villainous, but looks very glamorous, and incidentally,
I mean, this could literally be straight out of Doctor No. I mean, the end of Doctor No in that nuclear compound, even down to the machinery and everything, it's very, very Doctor No-ish. This is, and when was Doctor No? It's a few years before, wasn't it? 62 Doctor No. So.
Yeah, no, you're actually right. Actually, this looks a lot like those villainous lair sequences of Doctor No.
Doctor No, the end scene, yeah,
and
he plays these scenes so well. Such a lightness of touch.
And you're right, Dan, in that Nick Courtney literally looks like he's a Nazi in this in the costume as he is now. With he's a brown shirt. It's as simple as that. He is a brown shirt. So that must be a conscious design choice to make him look like a Nazi officer, complete with the leather strap over the shoulder, holding down the tie.
Yes, because isn't there a story that Douglas Camfield was a little bit displeased with the unit uniforms because of the fact that they weren't at all like the military uniforms that he was used to.
Really?
I remember hearing that one.
Story, don't they?
Yeah,
they changed them in the following season, don't they? But
I always like the ones in season 7 when the brigadier used to wear a beret more so.
He's really good, Nick Courtney, isn't he? I mean, he's just such a consummate professional. Nick Courtney is.
Brings the performance right down.
He
totally
really
aims bang on target.
Well, it makes you realise when you see and John Levine and Carolyn John, when you see them playing such completely different parts to the parts they normally play, it makes you realise that they're just really damn good actors. Simple as that, to get away with it. Because this was a big ask of a 1970s audience. This was a big ask to expect them to warm to a story where suddenly the characters that they're meant to like are all being so hideous and so hateful.
Yes.
So it is a demanding story, isn't it? It's not an easy watch.
I don't exist in your world. How can he be so certain?
Yeah.
Really interesting where Time Lords come into play with this.
Mm-hmm.
He says that with no question in his mind.
I do love that line, though. Then you'll not feel the bullets when we shoot you. That's a fantastic line.
Brilliant line.
You think that was Terence Dix's or Don Horton's?
I don't know. Yeah, it's an interesting question.
No, I'd be interested to know quite how much rewriting was done on the part of Terence Dix, because certainly Don Horton basically wrote the whole thing. It wasn't like the 4-parter came in and Terence Dix suddenly said, no, we've got to get this into a 7-parter, and so we'll put the parallel world in and I'll write all that. No, they threw it back to Don Horton, didn't they? And he did all the legwork on it. Look at the door. I just love the door. The door alone just makes it look like a quality production.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you compare it with something like the Silurians at the beginning of the season, with that awful door that's got no glass in it in the in the research center.
Yeah, it's like they just know what to put in frame to make it look good, don't they?
Quality, yes. Well, I get maybe that does come down to Doug Camfield. He's renowned as one of the greatest Doctor Who directors, and with good reason, I think.
Up until this point, there haven't been so many instances in Doctor Who at all, I don't think, where the Doctor was so much our only identifying character. We're completely with him, and those scenes where he's driving Bessie and they're chasing him, the camera's sort of right on his lap, and we sort of feel his sort of the dawning of the truth on him. Whereas usually it's through the companion, isn't it, or through the other characters, and the Doctor's quite aloof compared to that.
Yeah, I mean, you think I suppose the closest comparison will be something like The Deadly Assassin, but even that has got likable characters in who are trying to vaguely help the Doctor, so he isn't completely on his own. Whereas you're right, Dan, in this, the Doctor is literally on his own. And he's the only character that we like.
I love that. Yes, he's the only one remotely likable.
Absolutely. So, as I say, it feels like a big ask for the audience. It's assuming a lot on the audience's part that they are sophisticated enough to stick with this. I think that's your Swarfega, Stephen. That's definitely the Swarfega squeezing out of the drill head.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yes. Actually, it probably is that was being referred to.
That is absolutely, because I remember that from the 70s. That's definitely Swarfega.
Yeah, and I just love it again. I mean, I know that the Doctor's just done some Venusian Aikido on Benton, but I just love how easily he's able to just move around this layer.
Yes, I know. But it's one of those things that if he didn't, you wouldn't have a story. But isn't it interesting that you're right, Steve, and you're absolutely right, and yet, interestingly, it doesn't bother you because the story itself is so good, and if the story wasn't good enough, it would bother you, and it would take away something from the story, but it doesn't take away, because you don't notice it because you're so caught up in the drama.
Exactly, and I love the escalation here.
This is brilliant. It really steps up.
Yeah.
You know, we said at the beginning that it's not a fast-paced story, but this so far, episode 3 feels really, really fast-paced. We haven't, you know, we're 20 minutes in, and I don't feel we've stopped.
Yeah,
we haven't taken a breath yet.
Because even when they've stood still, there's whatever's been going on, whatever's being said is important. It's compelling, and that cliffhanger that's understated as well by this story standards.
Yeah. And it's just odd because, as I say, so that's a really tough episode for an audience to watch. They've literally had the rug pulled entirely from under them. They've watched Doctor Who for goodness knows how many years, and the rug is pulled from under you in that episode, and you've just got to try and work with it. It must have felt a bit of a struggle for an audience, and yet.
The whole idea of parallel universes, I mean, it's a very famous sci-fi and fantasy trope now. It gets used, obviously, I think every genre show has brought it out, sometimes multiple times in quite a short period of time. But you get mainstream shows do it as well. You get soap operas do it now. NCIS, that's done it. I would imagine that Neighbours has almost certainly done it because it's that accepted. And the shorthand of, I mean, like you say there, we've got the sort of the whizzy whirly effect, but there's always an effect to get you there emotionally pretty damn quick, you know, in a short period of time.
And it's interesting because actually that episode was the lowest rated episode of Inferno, and the viewing figures go steadily up as the episode carries on. So people obviously did stick with it. They understood it. They worked it out. They weren't scared off by what is quite as I say, it's a very challenging story.
And And if you're one of the people that missed this story, given that the ratings were a little down, and you came back to episode 4, you'd be thinking, "Hey, what went on here?" Because this is one of the other things that happened is that sometimes, for reasons beyond your control, you might miss an episode, and you didn't really get a very deep fill-in on that, did you? So sometimes you had to try and figure out what had happened.
So many subtleties in that, Stephen, that you've pointed out to me. Genuinely, I've never noticed them before.
And it's interesting because if you think of modern drama now, instead of the reprise of the cliffhanger as we always get in classic Doctor Who, now of course you would get that 1 minute at the beginning where you have that whole recap of the entire everything that you've missed so far in the first minute of the episode, which always makes me think, okay, if they can tell it all in the first minute of that episode, why did I bother watching the first 3 episodes, for example?
I've got a quote here from Caroline John. It says Caroline John enjoyed her role as section leader Elizabeth Shaw and said it was fun playing baddie Liz, and that she hated doing the scenes where she was playing the goody version because she was boring compared to such an evil character.
And because
they do say that
she's got a point.
Yeah, they do say that bad guys are more interesting, don't they?
And I think you can see that certainly, with Nick Courtney, he's really relishing it. But I mean, it's interesting because that character in particular, he could really chew the scenery, as could Caroline John. They could really chew the scenery with those parts, but they don't, again, because it's all so understated. And I can't help thinking, in the hands of a lesser director, Inferno might be literally unwatchable because of the complexities, because of the demands on the actors and on the part of the viewer. I just feel in the hands of a lesser director, it might be unwatchable.
It must have taxed them all. Obviously, it stood out in all of their minds because, as you mentioned earlier on, Simon, Nicholas Courtney, he dined out on a story connected to this particular episode, didn't he, for the rest of his days? And people loved him for it. People wanted to hear it.
Exactly.
Can you remember it? Did you hear him give it live?
I did. I did hear him give it live. I can't remember how many times I heard him gave it live at various conventions and things like that. And for anybody that doesn't know it in recap, and I'm not going to do it anywhere near as well as it might even be. Was it John Pertwee used to tell it as well, hadn't he? I think they all used to tell it.
Probably.
And the idea was that in the scene in that particular episode where they walk in, might even be a later episode. I'm not certain, but at some point they walk in. No, it's got to be that one because Nick Courtney's sitting with his back to the camera with his eye patch on, and they apparently all walked in for the I don't know whether it was a rehearsal or a take, and as a wheeze they'd all decided, Carolyn John Pertwee, John Levine had decided all to put eye patches on that would crack Nick Courtney up the minute he spins round in the chair. And of course, in they walk. Nick Courtney turns around in his chair. They're all standing there in their eye patches, and apparently Nick Courtney never broke character once. He stayed totally in character, never cracked a smile. And John Pertwee was forever, resenting the fact that he never quite managed to get Nick Courtney to crack a smile, to break down.
The story was told at pretty much every convention that Nick Courtney ever went to. Now, I met Nick Courtney 2 or 3 times, but I never saw him on a panel, so I never did hear it live. But I have heard it on tape. I think it was a Mythmakers interview, something like that. They got him to give it there. And it is a great story. Stephen Moffat paid tribute to it in the story The Wedding of River Song. I've got on my notes here. I couldn't remember all of this. But yeah, the eye patch story became so closely associated with Courtney that Stephen Moffat wrote scenes in which everybody was wearing an eye patch into the 2011 episode as a tribute to Nick Courtney, who had died earlier that year.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that. I don't think I ever saw the Weddings of River Song. That's probably why.
So yeah.
Incidentally, I mean, normally when Doctor Who would finish, we'd be putting on our coats to go home because we used to watch Doctor Who on a visit to our grandmothers on the Saturday. But if you were watching this 50 years ago, you would now, if you were still in front of the TV, you would now be watching the Debbie Reynolds show, just out of interest.
Oh my goodness! Talk about going from one extreme to another. Good gracious!
That must have been donkey's years old. But was she still? Was that a new show, or was it like something?
I don't know how new it was. No, I don't. I mean, we'd have to look it up. But yeah, but this is what I mean though about how Doctor Who was like such a shift in gear on a Saturday afternoon, and then once Doctor Who was over, it's like the BBC went back to what it was before with its light entertainment programs.
Well, I suppose it's interesting because, of course, Doctor Who had come more from that light entertainment angle, hadn't it? And so if you look at certainly the later Patrick Troughton stuff. It is more of that light entertainment-y stuff, whereas obviously famously with season 7, they really turn it into a gritty adult drama, and every story in season 7 is gritty, and this is by far the absolute zenith of grittiness, this particular story.
It is early to be offering a family audience, any audience, strong stuff like this with these. I mean, I know we're being given it piecemeal, and watching it again like this, it's the same thing, dripping it to us. But it is strong stuff, isn't it? It's acted very, very strongly. The analogies are there right in front of your eyes. It's very uncompromising. There's no levity that I can think of. What's his name? Greg hasn't even tried it on in this one. So it's very, very dark, very relentless, and I can only imagine. If you were watching this in 1970, if you remember being at school and talking about this in the playground throughout the following week, I'd love to know. I'm sure the other guys would love to know what you remember of that time and the rolling out of this story, and what you thought. Would anything ever be the same again? Because Doctor Who was, with every story, it was sort of breaking new ground, wasn't it? This season did break the mold. I mean, they would break it again probably the year after, but it is very, very mold breaking. I'm looking at that picture there of John Levine. It's not the kind of picture of any version of Benton that we're used to seeing, is it? People are not cruel about John Levine, but he's a very sort of larger than life character himself, isn't he? And Benton, that character, he didn't develop to a great extent, but Levine's clearly thinking there as he's selling us on this alternative version. They've fully invested in it. Another one of Caroline John's wigs there. That can't be. I'm sure she has 2 wigs in this episode.
She must do, yeah.
It's a shame because the wig is not the best. I mean, we didn't talk about the wig once in that episode. I guess again just because the episode is so good. But boy, she drew the short straw with that wig. Let's be honest, it's not the best, is it?
Yeah,
no.
You think about
Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
She have the same crew cut that Nick Courtney's got.
She'd have looked really good with very short hair. Actually, that's what they needed to do for her, Dan. Actually, you're right. That's what she needed was a crew cut.
What's the villainess's name from Russia with Love? Klebb.
Oh, Rosa Klebb.
Yeah,
that's what she needed.
Like that. Yeah.
Well, maybe they should have gone a little bit more ahead of their time and gone full Lieutenant Ilea,
Maybe. That might be
a step like that.
That might be just a step too far. But it's interesting. I mean, again, let's not forget this went out at 5:15 on a Saturday. This definitely feels like it should be 7 o'clock. This is an adult drama. This is not children's television.
No.
This is definitely 7:30.
Exactly, because there's quite a sinister line in that. I mean, although it would probably bypass the younger viewers, but when the Doctor asks where Christopher Benjamin character has gone, and the word goes, oh, he died in a traffic accident 24 hours ago. That's quite sinister stuff, because that's not an accident, right?
And
things like that did happen at this time as well, didn't they? There was a thing in the 60s and probably up until the mid to late 70s, because there was an ITV show called The Sandbaggers. And the guy who wrote that, he was involved. He used to work for the government or something, Stephen. And the Sandbaggers as a drama was about the very department that he used to work for. And didn't he go missing under very similar circumstances, or had a freak accident? Anybody ever heard that story?
No,
I haven't. I'm going to have to look that up because it sounds intriguing.
He either completely disappeared or had the most unlikely car accident you've ever heard. It's really sort of standout. But I don't think he was the only one. You did hear stories like that from what I remember. It's probably still going on when I was a child. But it has because obviously secrets then, things were a lot tighter and things didn't get out so much, I would imagine. And like the government had been rocked in the 60s by numerous scandals, sex scandals and things with the press. And there was a few big disasters and things like that. And I think the press was sort of getting closer and closer on people like that. But drama was getting braver as I think, I mean, would you describe the 70s as a time of austerity? I think compared to the 60s, it probably was. And
Yeah, well, I mean, don't forget. I mean, it's only. I mean, it was after this time for sure, but certainly by the mid '70s, we were having terrible problems in the country, and super high inflation and super high taxation, and of course,
4-day
in
weeks.
yeah, I mean, by 1979, of course, it's like Leicester Square. There are famous pictures of Leicester Square basically being a rubbish tip because of the of all the economic problems. And in fact, one of my, this is slightly off topic, but I remember searching for photographs related to the film Damien Omen 2, and one of the famous pictures is there's a picture of Leicester Square with the Odeon of Leicester Square. They're playing Damien Omen 2, but in the foreground is all of the rubbish that's piled up in Leicester Square because of the economic troubles, and it's kind of almost like prophetic, really. But yeah, I think it was a economically a tough time, certainly as you got towards the mid '70s. But I think this was slightly before that. But yeah,
but
definitely.
it reminds me of shows. I mean, the Sandbaggers is one of the Sandbaggers was a little bit later, but I'm thinking more of programs like Doom Watch that started in. Actually, did that start in '71? So a year after this. And that was similar kinds of stories. It's not so fantastical as this, but it had a similar gravitas to it, didn't it? And it didn't they describe it as the show that pulls directly from the headlines about the things that people were concerned about, and people were concerned about nuclear power at this point, weren't they? Obviously, from what I've heard.
Yeah. I think the cracks were at the treatment of it. Yeah, and of course the whole point is, let's not forget that Inferno is based on a true story. It's based on this whole Mohole project that nearly got the go ahead to happen. So it's all kind of it's all fact, and it's also very the feel of Inferno is very much like Survivors as well. When was Survivors? 1970. So was it later? It's Survivors 75. Is it mid 70s? So that's interesting. But all of those, as I said, a lot of those early 70s dramas have that very, very gritty feel. And so in many ways, Doctor Who was kind of only it was going with the zeitgeist at the time, which was this sort of gritty drama. But as a result, I almost wonder how it managed to survive because of it going out so early in the evening and still clearly aimed at kids because of its time slot from the old Patrick Troughton days. And you just kind of think almost, how did it come back for season 8? How did it get commissioned again? Because it's not a 5:15 show. It's as simple as that.
No, indeed. But like you say, it's one more. Sorry, Dan, you go ahead.
Well, apparently this was Nicholas Courtney's favourite story.
Yes. Yeah, he frequently said it, and I think that's purely to the fact that he got 2 roles in it. But why not? I don't suppose he got paid twice. That's the other thing.
How many times do you think you've seen this story, Simon, over the decades?
How many times? Oh gosh, so many times. And it's one of those, you talked at the top about how 6 episodes can often be a long watch. And I think of things like the Armageddon Factor and think, yeah, you're absolutely right. Whereas with Inferno, I could literally just sit down and watch that as a 2.5-hour film. And I could not get up, I'd be quite happy to not even get up from my seat once. It literally never do I find myself thinking, okay, when looking at the watch, thinking it's beginning to drag. It just doesn't drag. There's no point it drags. It feels like a kind of a juggernaut rolling down a hill that you just can't stop. That's the feel I always get with Inferno.
Go for a toilet break and hit play again, and you can't stop yourself. I absolutely agree.
I could easily just sit down and watch the rest of the next 4 episodes straight off now, no problem at all.
Stephen, how is this changing for you now as we've watched a couple in? Is there things striking you as you watch it?
Apart from, it's a very strong story. I know we keep saying it, but it's a very strong story, and yeah, it is quite dark for 5:15, really. No, maybe not too dark, and I guess that this season proved that there was an appetite for a Doctor Who that moved slightly away from the style for kids and slightly more into the style for young adults, I mean, I've seen it a few
Summer
times.
too, with the light nights out. It wasn't dark out there, and the rating, but
No.
the ratings were going up.
Exactly. And I mean, the BBC did good drama. I mean, the funny thing is, I keep thinking about the series Colditz in the sense that obviously they're not like each other, but when I think about the BBC's ability to sustain drama for a long time without being all hurry and fast, things like that come to mind. And I think Simon's absolutely right. This is more like 7:30 programming than 5:15 programming, but I think it proved there was an appetite for it for sure.
Absolutely roaring stuff, and to the credit of all these good people, we've got some of them identified, Simon. We're still looking at the two ladies towards the left. We don't know who they are, and the gentleman on the right at the back row, actually, and the guy in the foreground as well. Any idea who they are?
No, afraid not. I'm guessing that the two ladies
John Horton at the front on the right, but I don't know.
But is this? I mean, do we know? Is this shot contemporaneous with Inferno? Is it taken at the time of Inferno?
Apparently so. Yeah.
Oh, okay then. Okay, so it could be Don Horton in the front. It's difficult to say. It looks more like a suit on the back next to Terence Dix. Looks more like a suit from the 6th floor to me. Don't know.
What are you up to in your turtlenecks?
Well, I think he just fancy getting in on a shot, to be perfectly honest. That's what it looks like to me. He heard there was a publicity shoot going on down at the Doctor Who office, and he popped down a couple of floors to get in. It looks like, I don't know, Hugh Weldon or somebody like that. And I'm guessing, because with the 70s being the good old sexist 70s that it was, I'm guessing the two ladies at the back are the secretaries, bless them, and the typists who typed up the script, bless them.
Yeah.
But there
Is it possible?
I'll try and find out. I'll have to look into this. If you're watching, let us know. Yeah, Inferno 50 Part 3. I've had a brilliant time, guys, and I have to. Even though I have seen this story before, I'm excited to see what happens next. I'm going to have to resist from going and watching some more almost immediately. Let's get this back up. I keep hitting the wrong button when I do that every single time. So, if you've enjoyed this video, please like it. Hit the like button, subscribe to the Spacebook channel, and share to your Doctor Who Facebook groups or onto your friends or your enemies from parallel worlds. Show them what they're missing in our YouTube. They can't really have it much better over there, can they? Yeah, I could be wearing an eye patch next week if I can source one, but I can't promise that in lockdown. I could always make one, couldn't I?
Oh, Dan, you should have done that this time. That would have been brilliant.
I should. I could have flicked the camera on and hit you all with the spoiler.
I should have got a really bad list late. Caroline John wig. That's what I should have done, isn't it?
There'll be some links in the comment section to all our other Doctor Who content, previous live stream shows. We've got the Rebecca Gold live event. We've got our ongoing The Killing Zone event on a Friday evening with Ian David Diaz, of course, and the cast and crew of that film. Don't miss that. That's been a lot of fun so far. One more of those to come. We're going to do this again. Hope you enjoyed this. Subscribe to the channel. I keep saying subscribe, and share. Stephen, Simon, thank you for joining me. Have you enjoyed yourselves going back to the Inferno?
Fantastic.
Just fantastic. But now my cheese on toast is just finishing under the grill, so I'm going to go and get that.
Yeah, put a green bulb in and pretend that your hands are going green. It's good to see you both. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, and I hope you've enjoyed watching it too. Come back for more. There'll be more Doctor Who content later in the week, more live stuff. Yeah, but for now, thank you for your time. Bye-bye.